So a lot of content in Throne and Liberty revolves around PvP. So I want to cover what skill setups to use for both group scale content, where it's you versus a whole bunch of others, and then more small scale content, where it's like 3v3, 1v1, things like that, in arena or in smaller skirmishes. So let's cover what works best for me. Now, I do recommend two different setups. One is going to be for small scale. You can see the exact powers I'm using here, and one's for group scale. And the reason is because in these larger fights, you're generally not focusing on any one enemy in particular. You're usually doing a bit of damage to this guy, a bit of damage to that guy, so on and so forth. And so you don't need that much, say, burst damage on just one guy in particular. That's more for smaller scale fights where, yeah, it becomes a lot more important to be able to take on an opponent by yourself. The more 1v1 type scenario. We're going to start with small scale and what specializations you need for that and what rotation you're going through. So as you can see, those are the different skills I recommend, and that gives you a load of burst damage with some decent CC to be able to take down even tankier opponents. We will jump to specializations as that does change some of these abilities. Quickfire, you want these three specializations, pretty important. Nimble Leap, you then want the consecutive use, the cooldown reset, and the immune. The immune is massive, allows you to evade enemies' stun, collision, bind, sleep effects when used at the right time, and otherwise used to reset quickfire and buff it up significantly, giving it extra range, extra crit damage, and also that attack speed. It's a huge effect there. This combo is super good for like picking off targets. You'll use quickfire, your nimble leap, quickfire, nimble leap, quickfire, and a lot of squishy guys will be dead by then, or it'll be enough to finish off some guy who isn't, say, full HP or isn't super tanky. But you can't rely on that. It won't be enough in most cases to actually kill a guy. Then you have Detonation Mark, which can be your absolute nuke ability for follow-up after you've dumped your burst. This will trigger and just, yeah, absolutely nuke the guy. Just be aware you can get the specialization stamina stagnation. It will help kill tanks if that's what you're having issues with. Then we have Selfless Diffusion. Now, you may very well want the specializations to remove CC and to gain health, concentration, recovery. And that might depend for you. In small scale, I haven't found it overly needed, but you would just remove, like we saw there, the specialization from Cleaving Moonlight, and you can have both of those. And it's a great effect. Every time you use this skill, you get a massive speed boost. You're able to like move through enemies very easily, and you remove that CC. Unfortunately, not when they knock you prone. So there's no point spamming this if some great sword user knocks you to the ground. Only when you're stunned standing there or put to sleep, you can use it and run off. Otherwise, you can use it offensively to increase your off and double attack chance as you go to do your burst damage rotation, as we'll discuss a bit later. But you want to have Mother Nature's Protest with that specialization. It can change a little bit. Most cases, it's just a reliable lightning arrow, again, for smaller scale content. But do be aware there's the frost arrow for the extra bit of a slow. I haven't found it overly useful because if you can just kill the guy, it's better than slowing him down a teeny bit. As for the dagger specializations then, as we showed earlier, instead of having the buffs to Selfless Diffusion, especially if you're using it offensively all the time, then I do like to have the 2 casts of Cleaving Moonlight. And you do want to have the extra Thunderclad bombs on that. Now, one thing to be aware is every time you apply Thunderclads, you're applying a weakened effect. And this is really important for when you go up against somebody who's using a bow. They might be running the ability Devoted Shield, and that would give them 30,000 extra shield, which can trigger every time you apply Weaken at that chance, which is going to be increased significantly when you get that thing upgraded. So what can happen whenever you're applying these weakened stacks is that they just keep getting more and more shield. So it's something you really have to be aware of while playing this setup. If you are running into those bow users, and a few of them, then it may very well be better off to switch out from using those weakened effects. Because again, you could just be like screwing over yourself and your team by basically just giving them a ton of survivability through that effect. Now be aware, this will be getting nerfed, the devoted shield, but we don't know exactly when yet. With regards to my larger group PvP, I don't use any of those weakened effects. So this would be somewhat of a setup you could use if you're having that issue of those bow users running that ability and always stacking shield against you. However, even with that shield, with this combo and rotation, you can generally still nuke them. So it might not be an issue to you as long as you can land your full rotation. So the other dagger specializations here is the skill distance increase for Shadow Walker, the Thunderclad's bombing for that brutal incision to make it what it is. The same with lightning infusion there, you're changing it from inject venom to that. It also reduces the enemy's endurance per stack, which is great. And then ankle strike, you want to have, say, the offhand weapon activation. That gives you the increased chance to be able to basically deal your damage twice, just like heavy attack. With regards to a few notes on passives, you generally want to go with all of these. If you have more than enough hit chance, you can switch off using Eagle Vision and use your Bloodlust instead. The rest of them here are very important. And particularly when you're looking at upgrading skills for PvP, definitely focus on getting that Shadow Walker upgraded, that detection upgraded. That'll give you a significant boost in survivability with that evasion, especially when you have gear to give you even more evasion. And as for your active skills, make sure you are upgrading that camouflage cloak, because it starts out on only like 3.5 seconds and you can get that up to like 10.5 seconds. Make sure to get that ankle strike upgraded too, because you need to get that chance for the collision of prone, and also your Shadow Walker is important as well, because you need to try and get that bind on the target. For the combo to work, where you Shadow Strike somebody and then you ankle strike them, you need to land the bind, and then you ideally need to land the prone, because then it's much easier to land the combo on your target. Like if he's knocked prone, he ain't attacking you back and he ain't going to CC you, he ain't going to interrupt you, and you'll be able to output all that good damage against them and pretty much just nuke them if that happens. And a lot of the time it will just be who can land that CC first wins. And if you're shadow striking right on top of them, ankle striking them, then they can't do anything in return. But sure, if they catch you, well, you could be the one dead first. And that's a lot of how PvP fights are gonna go. Whoever CCs the other person first, and if that other person doesn't have a CC break, then that person's gonna be dead. And prone is very powerful because there's no CC break to it. There is this purification stone, which I highly recommend. It can help you break that CC, but it's only going to do like blind, sleep, stun, and not prone. So that is one of your most powerful abilities, and you need to be landing that combo. You'll only get that prone here if you land the bind from Shadow Strike, so get those skills upgraded. You can maybe see that more clearly in action here. So we go jump on the target to bind him, and then we hit the ankle strike and he's lying on the floor. And it'll take a while to stand up, and that'll give you enough time to land the rest of your combo to kill him. So what is that combo? What is the exact rotation you need to use with your abilities? Well, it's fairly straightforward and very similar to what I recommend for PvE right now in those boss fights. It is very simply just this. Make sure you have your Mother Nature's Protest active. It should be outlined in gold just there when you have the lightning infusion. Be aware if the enemies get the better of you and you die while it is active, it can bug out visually. It might look like it's active, as you can see there, it looks like it's yellow, but it's actually not active. You need to go and press that to activate it properly. A lot of times I'm caught out with this and don't end up activating it. You can see when it is properly activated, it then has that gold border. Then you have your lightning infusion. Again, if you're having issues with your targets always having devoted shield and you're struggling to kill them because say your burst is not enough, then you might need to switch off using it. Just be aware though, you do lose a lot of burst damage when you switch off Thunderclad's bombings as well, because you won't use the Thunderclads, you'll just have it as brutal incision. It's still good to kill a target, but it won't nearly do as much damage. Then you have your selfless diffusion. Again, you might want to save that for defensibility to break out of a CC if you are running into a foes where that's an issue. Because yeah, if you're having issues with getting CC'd all the time and not being able to output your combo because enemies keep getting the jump on you, well, it's definitely better off to have that CC break so you aren't struggling as much. But it is a massive boost to your damage output and reliability to get the offhand activation, along with the cooldown reduction. And then you will shadow strike somebody. So you will teleport on them, bind them. Again, make sure that skill is upgraded so the bind chance is a lot higher. And when you do land it, you're following up with ankle strike to prone them and get the offhand activation, followed by detonation mark to basically give them that massive damage hit after you've done your combo. So you do cleaving moonlight, quick fire, and you should have 20 stacks of thunderclads on them simply with the casting that. And then you're using your thunderclads bombings, and they should, in most cases, be dead. If they're not dead to the bombings, then they'll be dead to the detonation mark. And well, if they're still not dead to that, you might be focusing the wrong guy. Because in some groups, you could have a tank, you have a healer, and if you're focusing the tank and not the healer, well, the healer is just going to keep the tank alive and your combo will, in most cases, not kill them in time. So focus that healer first. And with your lightning infusion, reducing the endurance stacks, you should still be able to kill a tank with this combo. But you have your other abilities still, like your knife throwing. This is primarily used on those tanks where you're having issues of them out healing you, because you will reduce their healing received. And then you can land your combo and kill them. So you might throw that knife throwing in at the very beginning. The effect lasts 6 seconds. So enough time to dump your combo. This will also be getting buffed, and be sure to upgrade that skill too, as you will increase its effect. And then yes, be aware you have your cloak ability to go into stealth. And this is pretty huge for the ability to cancel bind. It's another sort of CC break, but only against the bind, that's it. But yes, also movement speed reduction effects, which is nice. But this breaks as soon as you attack somebody or you morph. And also, people can break you out of stealth by hitting you with just area attacks that are non-targeted, using a collision, stun, or sleep. You might find people knocking you out of stealth, which can be a bit jarring for the first time. If that's an issue you're struggling with, then you may very well want to take the CC immunity specialization on the cloak. So as soon as you enter it, you're actually immune to all of those conditions, preventing them from knocking you out of that stealth, allowing you to get away. But that should be the entirety of the combo explained. Be aware again, cleaving moonlight, massive for applying those thunderclads, and will also trigger your shadow walker there, which is very nice when you have those ranged and magic damage dealers hitting on you from a distance. Whenever you use nimble leap, you also trigger that. Whenever you use your dodge roll, you trigger that. So it's up so much of the time. And then detection, if you get that upgraded, nearly all the time having it, because you just get hit and then it's like 38% chance to get that upgraded, 41% chance to trigger that. The movement speed feels great, along with a massive boost to evasion. Do be aware there's some other notable abilities which we get into and we do use in group content, like your smoke screen. It can be a massive boost when against ranged damage dealers. And that is also when we're going to be using our Annihilation Barrage shot. I don't recommend it in smaller scale PvP, especially when running up against targets who know what they're doing. They will just CC you while you're in your barrage and you'll do nothing. Or if they have the daggers, they'll pop the smoke screen and you'll also do nothing. It really makes you vulnerable while casting this, and it's a lot better to be able to just dump your burst, kill the guy and leave. But let's get into large scale PvP and what I recommend here. This is where, yes, Annihilation Barrage can be very useful because you're in chaos here. People might not be able to target you quick enough to stop you, and ultimately that you'll deal a ton of damage to them. It might not be enough to kill anybody unless it's combined with the rest of the group when they stack like defensive stats. You may see clips and things where people are just getting completely wiped by those abilities, but that is early game. That's when people have no defensive stats and they're very new to the game. You will not be really killing people with Annihilation Barrage if they're at full HP and they have a healer to back them up, because your damage takes some time and they have the ability to dodge away from it and they have the ability to just CC you and stop you. So it's not that clutch of an ability, but it is useful again in large scale. My recommendation is a power setup with that set of abilities. So let's go through some explanations and your rotation here. So first of all, specializations. You can see what we're using here. We still have quick fire with the nimble leap combo. It's great there. We have the selfless diffusion with that CC break. Since you're in larger scale content, it's a lot more likely you will run into CC effects, especially like sleep bombers. And so this can be massive to break free from that. In most cases, you won't use it offensively unless you really want to be getting out a super effective Annihilation Barrage bomb. And that's where you have this with those specialization points. You need to have that, otherwise it's just Merciless Barrage. And then Gale helps a lot when they're grouped up. But if you're not finding that they're that grouped up, because they need to be within, say, 3 meters of each other, it's kind of useless. So you might want to spend those specializations elsewhere. But again, tightly grouped up targets, this can be massive. And that's the same with Mother Nature's Protest. If they're tightly grouped up, don't use Lightning Arrow, use Gale, and that will trigger it even more on the Annihilation Barrage. But yes, Lightning Arrow is more reliable for consistent damage output. We are using Recoil Shot, and if we had more specialization points, we could get the offhand weapon attack there. With the dagger, we have that Cleaving Moonlight. It's great. I'll show you with the combo to essentially allow you to use a recoil shot every time you cast this. So having it 2 casts is very useful. Shadow Strike again with the extra range is very nice. Brutal Incision, we don't put any specializations in here, and we don't use Inject Venom, and that's primarily due to the weakened effects. You don't really want to be applying those weakened effects with those bow users being able to use Devotion Shield to just completely counter you and basically grief your team by having them to gain massive shield against them. And then, yeah, your Camouflage Cloak can be very nice to have the CC immunity there, so you aren't getting knocked out of that. Especially with all that AoE spam, it can happen very easily that there's a collision effect or a sleep bomb. So this helps to be able to get away. And the cooldown reduction we have here is kind of optional because they don't really have any better place to put those points. But again, you can switch a few things around. Like if you don't need this extra survivability from the CC break, from your selfless diffusion, you could have the extra damage output for having the chance to basically deal this damage twice with this ability can be very nice. But I love this ability to be able to get away from your enemies. Like that speed boost is huge, within the extra range boost to nimble or even your dodge roll for that 1 second after you've cast it. But yeah, you don't have much of a combo with this, other than you'll pick your target and then you're going to go quick fire and you're going to go nimble leap, recoil shot, quick fire, nimble leap, recoil shot, quick fire, and that's going to be your combo. You'll do very good damage from afar, but if you do want to close the gap and it's safe to do so because all your allies are near, you can jump on them with your Shadow Strike, use your Moonlight, recoil shot, Moonlight, recoil shot, and then you can use Nimble Leap to get away at quick fire, Nimble Leap, and then quick fire and recoil shot. So you're just interweaving. Every time you use a mobility skill, again, you'll be able to use recoil shot. Even if it's just your dodge roll, you can use recoil shot. Dodge roll, recoil shot. And then for your like Camouflage Cloak and Annihilation Barrage shot, so you'd find a group of enemies, you'd use Selfless Diffusion, you use Shadow Cloak, use Nimble Leap, and then use your Barrage, and everything should be taking an absolute ton of damage, if not killing them, if you're lucky. If you have teammates to support you up doing some multi-target damage too, or you catch them with like lower hit points. And otherwise, you have Brutal Incision to just help finish off a target. So if they're below 50% health, you can use this. It'll get that crit chance boost, and you may very well be able to finish them off, unless they have a healer. And if they do, try and hit them with knife throwing first, so that their healing received will be significantly lower. And finally, you have your smoke screen. So if you're taking a ton of damage, or somebody else jumps on you and starts doing their Annihilation Barrage shot, just pop this down and they'll do no damage with it. It's absolutely massive to just completely negate enemies' ranged attacks there. The issue is it doesn't last very long, 3 seconds, and has a massive cooldown. You might want to consider getting the specialization for it if you find it particularly useful to increase the duration by like 1 more second. But usually on its base level of 3 seconds, it's enough to last the time that the guy is casting barrage shot. And that will massively help your teammates to survive it if that happens. Be aware you do have some other useful abilities here, like Frenzied Sword Dance can be great to get just a bit of damage against everybody and to hop around the place, can cause a bit of confusion, but it does have quite a bit of a cooldown. It will be getting a buff soon that will allow you to get a specialization to cause more area damage, and you do have this explosive trap. It can work, but it has a long cooldown and requires people to just not pay attention and stand in it. It has situational uses, maybe when you're defending a point, but you ideally want to put some specializations into it, like stunning your targets that get hit by it. Otherwise, it's just a little bit of extra damage. Multi-shot can be nice too, with also having collision shot to knock back enemies. But yeah, absolutely, in group scale content where it's just a load of guys killing a load of guys, you can experiment around with a lot of different abilities and they can all have their different uses. It can also be really down to like what group composition you're having, what tactics and things like that. Here I just got completely griefed with my barrage. The enemies just all went flying up from some guy who did that. But hopefully this enlightens you with what abilities you can use here on Crossbow and Dagger and what I found works best for me. Thanks all for watching, and we'll see you guys around. Goodbye for now.